All right, so should we get started?
Let's get this party started.
Okay. All right, welcome everybody. My name is David Walton. I'll be your host and voice behind the curtain for much of this. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today with a special shout out to some Texas Agilistas from the Dallas Agilista Meetup Group. Thanks for joining. So a little housekeeping, a little intro. So as you guys know, OKRs have been around for a long time, but I believe its recent resurgence has had a lot to do with the pandemic, a lot of people shifting to work from home for many organizations, and of course the alignment and work transparency challenges that come with that. Also, John Doerr's book, Measure What Matters, came out in 2018, and that kind of sparked this renewed interest in OKRs. They've been around for, I believe, 50 years at this point. So at a very high level, OKRs clearly connect your strategy to the work you're doing. Ideally, they help prevent, and I love this phrase, they help prevent whimsical pivots of prioritization in your work. I'm sure none of you have been working on something and been asked to do something else, and the excuse has been, well, because we said so. So I want to dispel some myths at the top. So this is not a webinar that's going to teach you how to write and score OKRs or the history of them or where they came from. This is specifically about the foundational elements that you need to have in place before you start writing and working with OKRs. OKRs are deceptively easy to understand, but can be difficult to adopt as a cohesive strategy. I see a lot of webinars that focus on, the history, the structure, and the benefits, but in my opinion, they're skipping 90% of the work that needs to be done in order to get that benefit. So we're going to do something a little bit different today. This will be a fireside chat with a couple of experts talking about common challenges organizations experience when going down this path. We want to point these things out to you because a potential problem identified can be avoided. Not to mention it's a lot less expensive if you identify those problems earlier. You will notice there are a lot of parallels between what we're pointing out as landmines and what many organizations see when they go through their digital transformation, agile adoption, change management initiatives. A lot of this stuff is going to resonate with you and make a lot of sense. So some quick housekeeping. Please submit your questions that you have during the Q&A. Some we may answer during the webinar, or we may wait till the end of the webinar for a more open Q&A session. And all registrants will receive a follow-up email with a link to the recording. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to meet the speakers that we have with us today. We're going to give you a little bit of background on Icon Agility and Ally.io. Then we're going to jump right into the landmines and then have a Q&A session at the end. But first, I want to tell you a little story as a kind of fun way to introduce what we're talking about today. And I hope you're not terribly claustrophobic. If you are, I apologize in advance, but I'm going to share my screen and show you something here. Okay, so something about me is I love scuba diving, especially technical scuba diving. And that's where you go really deep, like below 300 feet, or into caves, like you're seeing in front of you. So we're going along in this cave. I'm in the lead position. This is my instructor that you see on the video right here. And I come around a corner and I get stuck, like wedged in, stuck. Shoulders, arms, head in a hole, head down about 50 minutes from the entrance of the cave. So, the surface air, which is kind of important. So I'm completely stuck. I can't back up. I can't turn around. I can't turn my body, and my arms are like stuck to my sides, like little T-Rex arms. So I can't really push off on anything. So you're thinking to yourself, okay, that's probably not good. As you can see, we use 2 tanks when we do these things. So I look at my gauges while I'm stuck, and I realize, okay, I've got 62 minutes of air left. So knowing that I'm 50 minutes from the entrance, quick calculation, I've got about 12 minutes to unstick myself, or I don't have enough air to get back to the surface. So nothing quite focuses your mind like your own mortality, right? For some of you Agilists, at this point, I had a WIP limit of exactly 1. You might say I was 100% focused on small batch delivery, as in I wanted to get my small batch out of this cave. So, this is a point where the video stops and you hear the narrator come on and go, you're probably wondering how I got here. So are you with me? palms a little sweaty. After about what seemed like a lifetime and a half, my instructor grabbed my fins and pulled me out backwards. After that, he calmly signaled, hey, maybe we should go in the other direction, which of course I signaled back, yes, I would like that very much. In fact, I'd never been so completely in agreement with something in my entire life. So you're probably wondering, other than to give you claustrophobia and a complete innate fear of drowning, why did I tell you this story? Well, I told you this story because the reason why this was merely an incident and not a inconvenience or a tragedy is because I avoided several landmines along the way. You know where I'm going with this? So what did I avoid? The first one, of course, is I had an executive sponsor, as in the guy training me how to do this, someone that was responsible for the end-to-end process of me adopting this way of working underwater, someone who was also incentivized for my success to adopt this new way of working. What else did I have? We had clear communication and buy-in of why these skills are important. This is why you need to do these things. These are the challenges that they solve. You always talk about you're with them, right? What's in it for me? Well, I think you'll find that people who want to continue breathing are highly motivated individuals. Another one was dispelling some misconceptions. When I first started getting into cave training, I've been diving for almost 30 years. Like, I know how to do this. Jump on, get in the tank, go in the water, go in the cave, come back. It's easy, right? Well, I can tell you the first few days of training, I completely failed at everything I did. I was so frustrated because I thought I had all this learned knowledge of how to do this. But what my instructor kept telling me was, but you've never done this before. This is day one of the first day of school of learning something completely different. So you need to be humble and expect to make mistakes and just keep refining until you get it together. Something else about incorporating this into your DNA. You need to learn these skills until you can do them almost automatically, almost as if you're blindfolded. So fun fact, the final test of cave diving is we take you deep into the cave, we blindfold you, literally blindfold you, and you have to find your way out. That's the worst case scenario. They figure if you can do that, you're going to be fine in 99.9% of the problems that you see. And finally, the last one was having a plan. What happens if you get stuck? When do we turn around? Side note, he told me this later, but I was wondering why he always let me go first. Turns out I'm bigger than he is. So he told me, we always let the fat guy go first into the cave. I go, well, why do you do that? You're the experienced one. And he said, well, if the fat guy gets stuck, we can pull him out. But if the fat guy's behind us and he gets stuck, then we're all going to be in trouble. Makes complete sense. So I tell you that is a way of introducing the 5 landmines today. I hope I didn't scare you too much. So let's start with some introductions of the panelists today. So my name is Dalen Walton. I work for Icon. I love talking about Agile and OKRs and scuba diving, and I thought this is a great way to put it all together. But Wendy and Veronica, please introduce yourselves and give us a little background on where you come from.
Yeah, I'll go first. My name is Wendy Pat Fong. I am a strategic services manager at ally.io. I have around 10 years of experience in the OKR industry. In my past life, I have held chief of staff and director of people and culture role. Hence, I have been an internal OKR champion, rolling the methodology within an organization, getting buy-in, and of course, enjoying the benefit of what OKR and Agile can offer. Today, I have taken a more consultative role, helping leaders with the implementation of a process. And I am super excited to team up with Veronica and Dayton today for this webinar.
Yes, thank you, Wendy. Hi, I'm Veronica Stewart. I'm an enterprise, can't even say the word today, business agility coach. And I've been helping organizations, all different kinds, for over, I don't even want to say how many years now. I started in Agile, being one that actually was part of a transformation and turned into a consultant myself. And one of the things that really have gotten me interested in the OKRs is the things I've seen, and we all know, those of you that have been in Agile transformations, of the challenges that has been through all these years since we've been trying to scale. Another thing that I also do is I'm an advocate for influencing the modern workplace. So not only do I help with transformations, but I also help build influencers of change in trying to modernize the modern workplace we see today.
Great, thank you. All right, so as we said, we're going to do a little bit of background on Ally and Icon, then we'll jump right into it. Make sure my mouse is working here. Okay, so a little bit about Icon specifically as it deals with OKRs. OKRs, much like Agile processes, work best when your entire organization is using them, not just a single team. So that's where we come in, we as Icon. We're the people. Icon has a long, successful history of helping companies adopt Agile processes at scale. Fun fact, we were one of the first partners to sign up with Scaled Agile, and we've been doing this type of process people work from version 1.0, even before that when we were doing XP and rep consulting. So we provide the workshops, classes, certifications, and coaching expertise that helps organizations unlock the intrinsic capabilities of your knowledge workers to think and interact in a new way. Our expertise is helping scale those people-driven processes that need to integrate OKR seamlessly into their existing workflows. Think of us as we're landmine recovery specialists. If you hit one of these landmines, we can help you get back on track, reassess, get the right foundational practices and processes in place to really move the needle for your organization. And now, Wendy will tell us about a little bit about Ally.
For sure. Ally.io is an objective and key results OKR platform that connects every employee to your biggest organizational priorities, aligning effort and output into actual outcome. We are known as one of the fastest growing B2B SaaS company in the world and has raised 76 million to date in June in just 3 short years. I am very blessed to be part of an incredibly passionate team, earning the privilege to work with our customers with solving their complex business challenges, mainly connecting their vision, mission, core values, and strategic goals to execution through OKRs.
Thank you. Now we'll talk a little bit about why, alignment is the foundation of impact. If you're not aligned, you don't have impact. Pretty simple, right? I think we all know and have been in situations where sometimes the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. And the wasted work and doubled efforts and wasted resources that can happen in that. But I'll definitely toss it to Veronica and Wendy to talk a little more about this.
Now, those of you that are Agilists watching us today, does that sound a little familiar as well? We talked about how OKRs and Agile are very similar when it comes to the implementation. So I wanted to point that out because what you said, Dalen, it was like a deja vu. Any of you else are feeling that out there?
And I'm sure a lot of you have encountered this before, right? Like Dalen mentioned, like Agile and OKRs has been present for many, many, many years. But one of the things that, even with understanding what our strategy is, I'm sure you're putting a lot of effort in terms of, broadcasting your mission. With a recent study by MIT, they did find out that even in companies with very clearly articulated strategy, only 29% of the employees can correctly identify the company strategy. That actually means that 7 out of 10 employees are misaligned with the company's strategic direction. You might say, okay, well, what then? Well, think about it. Like, we are so busy every day. I'm sure every one of you come to work and you might have like millions of things to do. What OKRs, what objective and key results is trying to do is very much trying to get you to focus on the 3 to 5 big bets that you want to have to do this quarter, for the 6 months, for the 1 year, that will actually have an impact. And that's where Dalen came in with the alignment, is we all need to make sure that we're going in the same direction, right? Because if you think about it, you're in a team of, even a team of 30, if everyone did their own thing, are they busy? 100%. Are we all coming together to hit our mission vision? This is very questionable.
And there's a direct correlation when it comes to having a high engagement and motivation with everyone that's on a team. because when we're not clear what we do and we're not sure of our true north, as I call it, we start flailing. We start not feeling like we can make an impactful contribution. And that is very demotivating. I work with a lot of teams, areas, business groups that the one question I always ask them, and I actually had this question today, to be honest, is how connected are you to the strategy of all the things that you're doing every day? Do you have an idea of what the things that you're building is driving to those results? What is that difference that it's making? Blank stares. How often is it? Sometimes. These are the types of answers that I get every single day when I talk to people in agile transformations. As much as we try and as we're scaling and using a variety of different scaling frameworks, it is still a challenge out there. There's a huge disconnect from connecting the strategy to the execution layer. And this is where my love and my passion towards OKRs has come about, because I see not only does it make sense when you talk about how can we join with the leaders, the middle managers, and the people on the ground, and how do they get aligned or cross alignment, but also what I see every day as a culture of getting people engaged and motivated. And we know over the last year, the levels of motivation and with employees today has been quite challenging because they've all gone remote. And so this has been a huge concern, and all the statistics are out there of why there's so much focus now today on OKRs.
And
well, let's jump into it.
Just go ahead, Dylan.
Yeah, I know we got to start a couple minutes late, so I don't want to move on to the meat of why everybody's here, right? So let's talk about the first landmine, not having we do have a poll up too. So not having executive sponsorship. My nitpick for not having executive sponsorship is a lot of companies don't make the OKR initiative or the Agile initiative, make that in and of itself a top priority. It's always in addition to the other 35 things doing, we're also going to do this change management process. That rarely works. But tell me about your thoughts.
Oh, of course, I'm going to pull out. I have a couple of things. I thought this was a lot of fun I always like to directly correlate, again, my point of agile transformation and OKRs. Agile has been around for a long time, we know, and OKRs are growing. Agile's actually paved the way for the popularity of OKRs because it's almost like the first child, right? The second child and the third child get it better when it comes to parenting. This is the same example when it comes to OKRs and Agile. And part of the last business agility report, when they did their surveys, the things that they would say when it came to leadership style, and this has a direct correlation to executive sponsorship. Our transformation is being led bottom up. Although our leadership wants to achieve the benefits of agility, they have not yet even taken the step to take leadership shifts required. Or managers are self-serving and use processes and bureaucracy to maintain control, political maneuvering between business stakeholders and technology. And so these things are still a struggle today in Agile and why we're trying to get leadership buy-in to lead this change. And as I call skin in the game.
And one thing to think about is when we look at OKRs, like often, people read the book or they read a couple of articles and we came into the mindset of, I can do this tomorrow. Or, it's something that comes from the executive team. They're excited, all of the benefits that you have mentioned in the poll in terms of you're looking for alignment, engagement, transparency, agility. These are all great, but then what often happens and that makes OKR or Agile not be successful is then it's dropped off, right? It's tried for a quarter, it's then pawned off to somebody who has not been involved, or sometimes they don't have a seat at the table, they don't have enough influence or control to make a significant change, and it just doesn't pick up. And one of the landmines that we'll talk about is around, putting it as part of a DNA. But I think it's really important to hit the point here that, the success of achievement of your strategy is ultimately the accountability of a leadership team.
Right.
This is your performance indicator, right? Like alignment, focus on execution in one aspect of leadership team that you should be assessed on. So it shouldn't be like a project manager's role. They can be champions helping you make sure that you have buy-in across all of the different levels. But at the end of the day, the person who is responsible for this is the leadership team.
And Rafi was like, can OKRs work or even a scaling transformation work without the exec sponsorship? You're absolutely correct. One of the things that I've noticed through the years is how do you get them interested as much? And some people are challenged of getting the C-level with agile transformations being bought in. They always think it's something that is at the executing layer, right? That huge misconception. One of the things I love about OKRs, it speaks their language. I've talked to a lot of CEOs out there, especially in companies that are growing, and they're highly concerned about how do I get alignment and while I'm growing so fast. There's a lot of companies growing really fast right now these days. And CEOs, when you start getting down into the people and the execution, there's this natural tendency that they delegate. OKRs is a way that it speaks their language because it's highly strategic, and it gets them involved because now they're thinking about what is the vision? How do I want to run my business? And it has this personal, natural connection I've noticed. And I'm not saying that Agile doesn't, but we've struggled for over the last 20 years to get them to see this connection. And OKRs has a very natural connection. And this is why a lot of companies out there, they are able to have OKRs adopt at a higher level than we've ever been able to do over the years with Agile.
Mm-hmm.
I think it just underlines that this, I was gonna say that just underlines that we're underlying this piece, that this needs to be participatory executive sponsorship, not delegatory participatory,
Exactly.
or not delegatory sponsorship. Huge difference. Because if the leader doesn't care, then why should I? Basically, the net of it, right?
And again, this is a common theme across both.
Yeah.
And there are opportunities in a symbiotic relationship of how both can help each other. When you think of it, I call it the small A agility, where OKRs are naturally agile in itself, where the agile frameworks, they can use each other, the capital A, symbiotically. One is that you have the executive buy-in that we're talking about here right now. We both need it, we both want it, but we're looking at it in a way is both need strategy. And what does that look like? How do we do it? And we're going to get into a couple of the other landmines, what I mean by that.
And that's perfect segue into the next one. So we have an executive sponsor. What comes next? Well, failing to communicate the importance of why we're doing this. So I think many people on the call, if you got an email today, Thursday afternoon, that said, hey, as of Monday, we're all going to OKR, and that's all you heard. How well do you think that's going to work?
Very good.
Not very well. Like, what? Who's this? What's going on? So, you need to motivate and sell the importance of why this is what we're doing. This is the problem that we're trying to solve. This is how this is going to affect it. This is how you can support us in this effort. A lot of that gets skipped. Again, in Agile transformations too, hey, as of Monday, we're all safe. OKRs can be the exact same way. Yeah, go ahead, Veronica.
First question. So one is, these are kind of almost related. The first question, executive sponsorship, right? The reason why they need to be bought in is because to start even number two, they have to be bought in. And the first question that they need to be answering is why OKRs, why Agile? And it's not a very superficial question. To be predictable, to be sustainable, to have speed to market. Okay, well, what about that? We have to dig a little bit deeper. And so part of that process is digging deep with your executive sponsor to really understand why they're doing this. What are the benefits? Because guess what? They have a task. It's about creating the message. We talked about skinning in the game, right?
Yeah.
And that's important for them to think about is how are they going to bring everyone along? Now, statistics. You're going to like this, Wendy, because this is going to touch on the people part. This is so you. So we know that, and I looked at a McKinsey report, and this is, I try to find things that were more relevant to 2021 and around, and that 70% of employees' sense of purpose is defined by work.
Mhm.
And so who do you think creates that message to give them that purpose? And then when we know that, and here's something that is a scary fact, but it is true, that 79% of employees are quitting their jobs right now.
Yeah.
There's a reason why they're calling it the Great Resignation. And so all of this is highly relatable to failing to communicate the part of organizational buy-in, because when you're doing a change of any kind of change, it is so important for it to connect to your organization's purpose, but just purpose in the general of why you're doing something and the benefits of it.
And this is where OKRs is the bridge that link, your high vision and why are you there as a company, right? So I've seen a lot of organization, talk about we are people centric, we love our people, we committed to it. And then when I looked at the OKRs, there's nothing around people.
I know.
Right? So it's a little bit of how do you go and say we're all about the people? So then one of your priority, one of your objective needs to be around people. So very often leadership forgets that OKRs is a common language, right? You are letting the whole company know that as a company, these are the different pillars that makes our success. And one big engine behind any process or any change is the people. And often that's get forgotten, right? Like we talk about great transparency, agility, but me, like Wendy, coming to work as an individual contributor, how does that affect me?
Right? And it's a huge miss. And we were trucking along before 2020, and now it's a realization that's not going to cut it anymore. You can see article after article, people powered, human powered organizations. And I think for the first time, HR is really getting a rise. It's like they're like getting in the forefront now. And this is a time for you guys to seize it, by the way. But getting back to, I like when you said language, and this is so important when we talk about language. Part of the process with your executive sponsor and the people that surround his or her leadership group is to think about the language of your culture, right? So this is when you start thinking about core values and so forth. This is directly related. It's one of the questions I always ask when it comes to agile transformations, because if there's a conflict, Houston, we have a problem.
You know what? I really love the fact that you talked about core values, because again, like very often, I work with organization where, core values are, plaque on the wall, it's been talked about once in a while. And I have one with companies that have very much live and breathe their core values through their OKRs. Like something like humility. I have worked with some companies where, CEO would come in front of everyone and say, I dropped the ball. We did not achieve our OKRs because I dropped the ball. This is a core value of humility. This is a core value of leadership that is being brought out through OKRs.
And this process of communication is the same thing that we talk about in agile transformations. And I'm going to continue showing the direct correlation with it, but also the complementary that both of them, I really believe, is a symbiotic relationship when we talk about agility. Because the OKRs, the process that you have to go through to do this, and also thinking about your agile, is almost like a checks and balance. Because that communication, you're getting tested. You're getting tested to why you're doing this. Yeah. You're getting tested to what are the benefits of why we are even having it. And if you can't answer that question, you're already in trouble right then and there. Mm-hmm. And you wonder why people aren't bought in.
That's true. Well, and I was just going to add that, failing to communicate, people think accountability is a negative. I hold you accountable for something is usually something that happens to you after something goes wrong, as opposed to accountable for a result, or a team accountable for something. And having that language is so important, that pre-messaging before you go down this path. So we've
Yeah,
talked a little bit about communication. Let's talk about the misconceptions. So these are some of my favorites. For example, I read John Doerr's book, let's write some OKRs, then boom, we get the benefits. Or isn't OKRs an HR thing? Wait, isn't Agile just a software development thing? That doesn't apply to the rest of the organization, right?
no,
What do you guys
never. Now, I have some fun ones, and these might be what you're going to say, Wendy, and so we'll fill the gap in. I did a research of what are the latest misconceptions that are out there in the last 2 years. So OKRs has been out there for a while, but because of the rise in the popularity, I got really curious today going, what are some of the misconceptions that they're still talking about? And I thought this was kind of fun. So we know the misconceptions of cascading OKRs. And what do we mean by that is I write an OKR at the top and we repeat it, cascading it down versus having them think about their objective to drive to that strategic result. And so those cascading is a misconception that you just take that and you repeat it all the way down to your team level. The size of a company, right? That if you're a small company, you can't do OKRs. It's only for the big companies or vice versa. There's a big debate, which this one I think you'll love, Wendy, is about performance reviews and using for that. I knew I was going to sweeten that one for you. You probably have some thoughts on that one, right?
100%. And I think, and yeah, the performance management one has been an interesting thing because I think with OKRs often, and I'm sure you heard that before, is it's something else for me to do, right? I'm already busy. I'm like working all these hours. Now you're putting OKRs on top of that. So as we talked for the last two landmines, it's very important to explain the why, right? Like, why do we think we're doing OKRs as an organization? What are we trying to get to? But from a manager level is I use OKRs as a way of performance, of talking about performance in a very objective way, because we set the expectation at the start of a quarter. These are the things that we're going to be working on. These are how we're going to measure it. And my job as a manager is to make my team successful. So often that thing of like, it's something else above and beyond that I need to do. No, this is the tool to help you have proper performance conversation. This is the tool for me as an employee to build my portfolio and to be able to show quarter after quarter, I set myself challenging OKRs and I have hit it consistently. It shows time management, project management, knowledge, and skills. So again, it's those things with OKRs where people often see it as like, like a vitamin pills, like, I'll need it once in a while, or I can switch it somewhere else, where you want to look at OKRs as, water, something that's essential for your company to be successful. You can't just use it. I know a lot of time when I'm talking to prospect that's looking at OKRs in general, they go, I have this pain, this is all these things happening in my company. And we are trying to find a painkiller, right? Yeah. You take a painkiller, you're all good, then just kind of like, sure, I'll go back to normal. But the normal might be the thing causing you pain. So
exactly. Yeah. And I love when you were talking about seamless. The same thing is how I feel about, I even have that in my tagline on my LinkedIn about seamless, agile and business every day. The whole point between OKRs and agile transformations is to make it seamless, because it should be a part of your business every day. That's part of one of our landmines that we're about to talk about. When one is you have the sponsorship, you get the right communication, and you go through the right steps, it will be seamless. And a misconception is it's something additional.
Yes.
And I'm gonna, Matthew talked about OKRs and KPIs. That's another misconception, that you have to choose one or the other. No, you don't. KPIs are like your vital signs. It's like you're running your business, the business as usual. And so you always are going to want to know your vital signs, right? And I love the example that was given to me about going to the doctor's office. Would we stop taking your temperature? Would we stop weighing you? Would we stop doing that? We need to know that the things that keep you up at night running your business, that we're not in the red. OKRs are the complementary about where you want to go in the future. They're aspirational, to Dalen's point when he put in the comments. Now, one of the things that can an OKR be related to a KPI? Yes, depending on, and part of the steps that we talk about in these landmines is that you understand the state of where you are as a business, that you might be in red with your KPIs, and that your OKR, one of your OKRs might be to get out of the red.
Yeah.
And then you start looking at your aspirational OKR. So a lot of these misconceptions, you have to choose, and that's absolutely not correct. It is related. It's a symbiotic relationship between both. One is all about where you're going, the goals of the future, right? So if you're trying to be innovative, you're trying to get in a different market, you have a new business model. And here's one thing. If you're going through an agile transformation, most likely it is an OKR, right? Because you're going through change and you're doing something different. Think about that. Now, your OKR, some of you that are in transformations that you're trying to manage the chaos, right? Might be related where that OKR is that. Now, we did have a couple of other misconceptions. Do we have some time to go through some of them?
We got about 30 seconds and we can move on to the last.
Okay. So everyone in the company, needs an OKR, and that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
OKRs have to be done in successive layers. And that's the cascading. So that was already mentioned. OKRs are a shared to-do list. No, they are not tasks and activities. That's a huge misconception.
Yeah.
And this is why trying OKRs on your own it's simple, but challenging, because what's the number one thing that happens? They write them as tasks. OKRs are laundry lists of what you need to do. And so that's that misconception of business as usual versus the aspirational goals. And that's where people confuse KPIs and OKRs. Mm-hmm. And we already talked about the performance evaluation. Oh, there's a couple of things going on in that chat panel. Yep. What's going on here?
And then KPIs, you can have KPIs so localized that you don't take the whole system into account. So be worried about optimizing one piece of an overall puzzle. So my favorite OKR misconception, especially when it comes to OKRs, is about HR. Like HR people love OKRs. Like, great, we're going to do individual OKRs and we're going to tie that to monetary incentives. Please don't do that. That is a horrible, horrible thing to do. For you safe agilists, it's like comparing story points between two teams and saying this team's better because they have more points. That leads to all kinds of problems and misunderstandings. So please don't do that.
Yeah, and just to add on the agile, to sum this up before we start on that, is that those of you that are doing scaled agile, that you have to choose between PI objectives and OKRs. That's a misconception.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, not incorporating it part of your DNA. What's in it for me? OKRs, is this another meeting and another thing I have to check in that's separate from all the other meetings and check-ins and status updates that I have to do with everything else? How do we avoid that happening in the company?
I think we've been talking about that quite a bit now. And again, like to what Veronica was saying, it's the seamless part. Is I have worked with some organization where, in the employee handbook, onboarding, first thing they talk about is OKRs. This is the way that as an organization, we are aligned, we are transparent, and we are all focused to make sure that we're all successful. It's already part of, the first thing that any new hires get into. And, they talk about OKRs, like, again, it's part of how the team norms, how the company norms actually are. We talk about OKRs, right? Yeah, in company meetings, in team meetings, and in individual. And I think sometimes that's where a lot of company goes, well, that's an HR thing, right? Like when we're talking about culture, it's an HR thing. No, HR is often the gatekeeper of culture, but every individual has a part to play. It's the same thing as, finance. Oh, it's, the CFO thing. No, it's everyone. Everyone needs to have an impact. And I think that's the same thing when it comes to culture, is often it's been pawned off to HR because, HR will do the learning and training, HR will do the culture, but how you implement it in your daily huddle, your company meetings, your town hall. Again, I think that come back to the executive sponsorship that we talked about in the first landmine is you need to lead by example. As simple as that.
And it's so important who you choose as your OKR champion. It can't be the side job. There's some commitment in there. There's some time in there to put in. And then also those OKR ambassadors that are going to help do this. So this is why it's so important to really think about it being woven in the fabric of your business every day. And part of that business every day that I keep saying, people are part of that every day. And you have to understand where you are as a culture, where your environment is, to say, okay, what do we need to do to bring people along, and what do they care about, and how do we do this to not make it feel like that extra thing, and it becomes part of their habit. This is what we do, and it takes time. And this is why it's so important that you have to consider this. Anyone that's in change management out there, and we try to ensure that we're using it in agile transformations. It's the same thing when it comes to OKR implementations. This is why I said they're very related, and they can help each other, because what we do in agile, of what we learned, and what we learned here in OKRs, again, they came into very different ways in organizations. If you really kind of understand the patterns in history, right, that they can be very complementary. So let's think about statistically. Agile started in IT. So you have a lot of people in that area that's already come along and speaking those languages and what might have you, where OKRs have started in different areas. They are spinning up more like in HR. You see it in product groups. So maybe more like, just say the business side potentially. Let's just say that for conversation's sake. What if, when you start to use both in a symbiotic relationship, this is why I love both of them, that it starts to help close that gap. Yeah. And it naturally starts to create the culture, the fabric, the seamless that I'm talking about. Because this one is a tough nut. We all know that. And anybody that has, the larger your company is, the tougher that you have an uphill battle when it comes to culture shaping.
But one thing that I'll say before we move on, it's also a mindset change, right? Like if your organization have not been transparent before, hasn't necessarily, shared, what your objective or strategy, or haven't had people encourage people to look at how to measure your objective, it's a shift that takes time, right? Like there's a lot of research that said, like, to remember one word, you need to hear about it like 17 times, like 17 repetition. So to even go into like, wanting to be part of a company DNA and culture, it's really important to take a step back. Do we have the right culture for it? Right? When we're talking about transparency, when we're talking about accountability, I work with some organization where, I'll hear from manager that goes, I never done this before. And all of a sudden, they want me to implement it in my day-to-day. Like I can't even figure out how to write SMART goals and how I need to go and align and cascade and get my team to do it. So it needs to be really important to think about that. Is like you're moving from maybe a fixed mindset, like from Carol Dweck, for some of you that's familiar with that, to a growth mindset. Right. We're looking at learning, we're looking at reflection, we're looking at challenging ourselves, and not all about 100% head down focus commitment. It's a little bit of a shift there that takes some time.
Yeah, and right. I know that Kevin was asking a question about the OKRs on a train level. Is it right if I just answer that real quick? Because this is
sure, go ahead.
This is actually something I deal with very recently. And here's the thing. Part of SAFe, depending when you say the word mature, are you already doing product discovery and doing hypotheses driven development? If you are, then you know that we're measuring. We're actually taking a hypothesis and we're actually validating it. When we think about our PI objectives, there's an article by Ivar Jacobson that I actually shared today, by the way, because people are going, why features versus PI objectives? And where SAFe is moving, a lot of people in the community is saying the PI objectives, we should be writing our PI objectives as OKRs. But here's the thing. when you start to learn about OKRs, there's a difference between strategic OKRs and the tactical OKRs. When we get to the point of the PI objectives, those are tactical OKRs. And so what it does, it helps also ensure that we're lining back up to the strategic key results, not the objective, the key results. So we know how we're measuring that progress. So when we say, why would we need it for mature safe? Well, it's because it's actually progressing more in the way that you're using your PI objectives today. It's actually the further mature, if you want the truth.
Thank you for that, Veronica. Yeah, I think the place for OKRs, well, just my opinion, I'm not speaking on behalf of anybody else, is that if you're looking at your strategic intent and your horizon financing goals, then I think OKRs are a great place for that to play up at that level.
Yeah.
But let's move on to the last landmine, my absolute favorite, avoiding early planning. I love to ask clients a couple of questions when we always start. I always ask them, what's the problem you're trying to solve? Why do you think that's a problem? What evidence do you have to support that it's a problem? And how will you know that it's been fixed? Mm-hmm. Frequently, companies skip one or all of those questions before trying some new shiny thing.
Oh, do I have my war stories? I have lots of stories on Agile Transformation.
All those meetings, the meetings and cadences and check-ins, we'll figure all that out down the line. We don't need to worry about that up front. Yes, you do. And I know we've only got a couple of minutes on this, and then we're going to open up for the Q&A discussion. But I think this one's a no-brainer, I think, for a lot of people.
Yes, and we always get very excited when we start to implement something that we want to get to action, and we don't take a step back and look at the big picture. And one of the things is we have to go through the process to answer a couple of questions. We talked about the mission and being able to have the vision and the values, and you have to go through the process of identifying who that champion is, who the ambassadors, and guess what? You have to do training. That's part of early planning. Now, part of the planning also is figuring out your strategy of how you're going to implement. Are you going to pilot it? Are you going to do a little group? Now, remember, I always said there's a direct correlation with the Agile transformations. One of the number one things that I see a lot everywhere I go in the transformations is that we're not looking at it in a very strategic way. It's always like, okay, we're just going to put these processes and we're going to implement, and we're going to do these health checks and so forth. And our roadmap, what does a roadmap really look like? All of that we do up front to say, okay, what are the goals that we're trying to do? The why Agile, the why OKRs. And so they start framing this and really understand. And what we do in Agile a lot is say, okay, what is your 1-year vision? What are you trying to achieve? And that before you even get down to quarterly OKRs, and we still want to tie that even to an Agile transformation and be very strategic. If you don't go through that process, how do you know that what you're measuring towards, even how you're progressing in an OKR implementation or an Agile transformation? What is that? And so I see this all the time, that you just want to jump to action, implement a framework without any strategic planning and vision of how you're going to do it. And you wonder why, when we start getting in it, all the chaos starts happening. And the number one thing that an executive leader always wants to know is, how did I get my return on investment and paying all this money? And you know what? A lot of them can't always answer that.
Yeah, I've seen the best example of this. I've seen companies that want to adopt SAFe, but they haven't adopted Agile yet. I'm like, you're putting the cart before the horse. I want all the benefits of SAFe without doing all this other stuff.
Yeah, and the plug between the OKRs, just one quick plug, is that the OKRs, if you are starting an Agile transformation, this helps you frame it in a very strategic way. And if you do it right, it allows you to actually answer that question back to the C level of why you invested in Agile. And that's something I love to make sure that we do, because I've seen the value in it when you tie it all together. Okay.
Thank you, Veronica. All right, so we've talked about, these are the things that can go wrong. So great. Now I've avoided all these things. How can my company benefit? Well, it can benefit a lot. This is from an LSA survey in 2017, but I think most companies and folks would be happy for fractions of this type of improvement.
Yeah.
The OKRs tell you, am I doing the right thing? A value delivery framework like SAFE is, am I doing the thing right? Am I executing on the strategy correctly? Now, will OKRs help your company? Yes, but OKRs plus a mature value delivery framework is like a force multiplier. 1 + 1 = 5, if you can put those two together. They'll both benefit you by themselves, but together it's very, very powerful against the competition. Just really quickly, again, we're talking about failure to plan. You see this from the outside. It's like, oh, you just see, oh, we're aligned and our company's doing great and everybody's engaged. They miss all the stuff that happened below, behind the curtain. The partnerships, the education, the consistency, the vision, the sponsorship, the planning, dispelling those misconceptions. All this needs to be in play before you get to the promised land. Really quickly, I know we're got a couple minutes to wrap up, and then we're going to jump to the QA with time remaining. ICON does a lot more than just OKRs. We also teach everything under the SAFE umbrella. We've taught over 14,000 people in Scaled Agile. We have a number of SAFE fellows and SPCPs, not only on the people and processes piece, but we also have deep Agile financial technicality, as well as DevSecOps, TDD, BDD tooling, all that really hardcore 0 and 1 stuff. And we've worked with 40% of Fortune 100. So been there, done that. I've seen a few things, and we're happy to help.
Very much.
Wendy will talk a little bit about this.
Very much aligned with what Dalen just mentioned in terms of a slide is we have also seen, amazing results. And these are not like we can talk about ourselves all day, but this is what our customers are actually saying, that 88% say that Ally has really helped them create a higher performing team, where you can see that 77% of our customers have said that Ally really helps them create a stronger company culture. So there's definitely a lot of benefit that comes out of OKRs. And I think the 5 landmines are things for you to start thinking about. Is OKRs, yes, you can implement it within 1 week if you really wanted to, but take a step back. As we are saying about early planning, take a step back and look at where you're at, because these are definitely the things that you'll enjoy if done properly.
And take the learnings of the people that have already been there. Agile's been doing this for 20 years. Take the failings from that and know that it's no different, right?
Yep. All right, moving on. So opened up to the QA. Well, first we'd like to do a little poll. Did this help? Hopefully, there's a little more to the mix, a little more to the cake recipe than just writing the OKRs and reading a book and maybe even attending a training. You have to have some more pieces in place. So we hope this was helpful. Please look at the poll. It just popped up. We have a couple of QA questions we're going to get into. We got about 5 minutes left. Real quickly to break down the ally.io, that's the tool, people. You want to see how OKRs are visualized, how you get reporting on it, what third-party data sources that integrate seamlessly into it. How does it look? How do I know if I'm tracking correctly? That's their camp. ICON, us, we are the people. What does it take to get involved? What does a team look like? How long does this take? What does it cost? What are the questions I'm not asking about my organization, and what do I need to know? Another favorite thing I like to ask clients before we start on any kind of a transformation is your intent for this transformation? Are you playing defense or offense? Which means defense, are you looking to maintain parity with some of your competitors because you're slipping behind? Or offense, are you looking to out-innovate your competition? Because those two have very, very different investment paths.
I like
that. And that was what I was actually touching on when you think about your OKRs and KPIs. And those types of questions will help you be able to create a good strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple of quick questions. First one, we'll do Poonam's first. How to cascade OKRs to individuals. My strong advice is do not make OKRs individual. And by individual, I mean the individual contributor front line. That is not the place for OKRs. I think OKRs for individuals at the C-level, management level, I think make perfect sense. But what are you guys' thoughts?
One is we try to, when it comes to language, we try to stay away from the word cascade. And it's more about connecting. because one of the things that we always see is once you start to go through the layers, it's more about them critically thinking about how they contribute and make an impact towards a goal, right? It's all about creating that motivation and alignment. And I know you have some thoughts around this, Wendy. It is that until you get these parts right, your focus really shouldn't be about the individual. That should be more of what would be the complementary after fact, if I'm saying that correctly, because there's a lot more that you have to get right first before you think about the individual level. And you coming from HR, I'd love your opinion on this.
Absolutely. And I've seen it work well. I work with some companies that have individual OKRs, but I'll go back to what Veronica has been saying, is they have done it the right way from the start. It's like they have very much embraced OKRs from like a leadership level. We've seen the connection, the managers level are properly done. And then it gets to more like the individual level. However, it is not to say that they shouldn't do anything, that they have nothing to do with this whole alignment or this whole like org chart in itself. What we have seen, especially with Ally, is you can have them have projects. So very different from a key result in itself. But what are the projects that you're doing on an individual level that align to the key results of your team? Right?
And it's it's part of the agile teaming mindset, to where we try to not think it more about an individual, but more of a team contribution. And so if you're having conversations at an individual level, it should be, what are you doing to make an impact to the team?
Yes.
It's always team centric is my point.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. A couple more quick questions. Urvashi asks, our learning team is currently serving as OKR executive sponsor, not managed through HR at all. Do you think that makes sense? I think my first question would be, can that learning team break down impediments in other silos, and can they see the entire implementation across the entire organization as a system? Do they have enough political will to make things happen? More stick than carrot. if it needs to be. What do you guys think?
The way that I see this, I don't really look at as a department. I think of more being inclusive and being strategic of what you need to do as your organization. To Wendy's point, a lot about the culture and looking at the fabric, right? Because again, if we're trying to get buy-in and move along, my first natural curious question would be what about this learning team? And to Dalen's point is, what can they do? Where are they positioned? Are they aligned with the executive sponsor? Now, you wouldn't exclude HR. They would be part of the journey and along that ride. I don't think there's a fast black and white where it needs to be. Correct. It needs to make sense in your company. Some companies that are small, right? Because remember, it doesn't matter what size, they don't have a formal HR. So what do you do with that? I know you have some thoughts, Wendy.
I'm just looking at the time.
We're out of time. We're in overtime. We're in overtime right now. But yeah, I think it's. Oh yeah, folks need to drop. Real quick, the other question is, would you agree KPIs are about looking back and keeping a pulse on business as usual, and OKRs are forward thinking and innovative? Yeah, short version, yes.
I would say yes too. Like one of the things that I like talking about is KPI is like your engine, right? Like your dashboard in your car. If your fuel is low, it doesn't matter what OKRs is going to do. You need to fix your fuel first. Yeah. So I think to what Veronica was saying is KPIs is your business as usual, is the health of a car, and OKRs is where are you taking your car from point A to point B. It's
you need both.
Yeah.
Well, we are at time. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. We've got a couple of links posted up in the chat if you'd like to learn more about Ally or Icon, if you want to talk about people stuff or tool stuff or nerd out about OKRs, or if you want to talk about cave diving for an hour, give me a call. I'm happy to chat with you about that as well. Everyone will be getting a recording of this after. I hope you'll learn something. Thanks so much for joining us. And I look forward to having deeper conversation about any of the topics we've discussed, as well as the rest of the panelists. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Yvette. Thank you, Veronica, for joining us today and making all this happen, and Krista and Katie as well. And that's it, folks. We hit it. Not too bad. A minute or two over.
Bye, everyone.
Looking forward to talking to you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.